Picture this the way I saw it in my head later. 3 Navy SEALs from an O-81 team were pinned down in a narrow valley. Their ammunition was almost gone, and fighters were closing in from the high ground on every side. From where command sat, the outcome already looked decided. Paperwork was getting started for men they assumed were not coming back. But right when every rule and every voice said to back off, one young pilot chose not to accept that ending. This story, as I remember it, centers on Captain Delaney Thomas. She was 26 years old, flying an A-10 attack aircraft, and a lot of people thought she was too green and too emotional to be trusted. Still, when that valley started looking like a grave, she made her own call, redrew the plan in her head, and helped bring every man out alive. Before I go any further, let me ask you something. Where are you listening from? I always like knowing how far our Army family stretches across the map. Those SEALs were boxed in tight. The valley had turned into a full kill zone. Helicopters could not reach them without getting shredded. Fighter jets like the F-16 could not fire that close without risking friendly lives. From a distance, it looked hopeless. Up at command, people lowered their voices and started putting together the loss report. They did it quietly, like that made it better. But one person would not go along with it. That was Captain Delaney Thomas. She was 26 years old, an A-10 Thunderbolt II pilot with Irish roots, and labeled too emotional by the officers who had parked her in logistics work instead of combat. She did not look intimidating standing next to her aircraft, but she understood that machine better than anyone else on base. The A-10's 30mm Gu-8 cannon could chew through steel like paper. In skilled hands, it could put rounds exactly where they needed to go, even when friendly forces were dangerously close. Most folks claim she did not have that kind of control. That morning, around 6:30, the Afghan sun was already heating the flight line. Major Sanderson pulled her aside and told her, once again, that she was not flying that day. He said he needed her working formation drills with the new pilots. He said the unit needed steady leadership. What he really meant was simple. He did not trust her. Delaney took it without arguing. She swallowed the frustration, gave a short nod, and went back to work. What no one seemed to notice was how much extra time she had already put in. She spent nights in simulators, studied terrain maps until she could picture valleys with her eyes closed, and memorized ballistic tables front to back. She learned basic Pashto so radio checks would not turn into chaos. She even practiced manual calculations in case the targeting pod ever went down. She had marked maps with valleys and ridgelines where standard air support rules just did not work. She highlighted areas where doctrine failed people on the ground. Nobody wanted to hear about it. She kept studying anyway. During one briefing, she finally asked a single question. What if the enemy movement was not preparation, but a trap meant to pull our people into terrain where air support could not reach them? The answer she got was short and dismissive. Track the equipment, Captain. So that is what she did. And when the lights went out at night, she ran that same scenario over and over again in a simulator she had quietly figured out how to access on her own. Friendly forces surrounded. Missiles hidden in the hills. Enemy fighters closing in from every side. Danger close in every direction. She drilled the scenario until it lived in her bones. Over and over, she practiced taking out surface-to-air missile sites without peeling off her attack run. She trained herself to lay down a razor-thin stream of 30mm fire right between friendly strobe lights and enemy muzzle flashes. 47 full runs in the simulator, and every pass got tighter, cleaner, and more precise than the last. At 1:47 in the afternoon, the base siren shattered the normal routine. Inside the operations center, the screens lit up with valley terrain that looked just like the one she had studied for months. Narrow, steep, and deadly. Radio chatter filled the room. Navy SEAL Team 7. Multiple detachments. Everyone talking at once. 381 friendly forces were pinned down, surrounded by roughly 800 enemy fighters. 2 surface-to-air missile sites were confirmed. Hostile forces controlled 3 ridge lines, and our people were trapped in a natural bowl with nowhere to move. Fighter jets were still 15 to 25 minutes away. The rules were clear and unforgiving. No firing within 100 meters of friendly strobe markers. The SEALs reported enemy fighters closing to 50 meters. Major Sanderson asked the room for options. What he got back was doctrine. Standard procedures. Delaney spoke up and offered the A-10. Sanderson shut it down immediately. He said they were not going to risk the mission on an untested pilot. Then a communications technician interrupted and passed along new information. The SEALs estimated they had maybe 30 minutes of ammunition left. That stopped the conversation cold. Time settled the argument, even if doctrine never did. Delaney stepped out into the hallway, counted 30 seconds to steady herself, and ran the numbers in her head. 10 minutes from her locker to wheels up. 12 minutes to reach the valley. That left a narrow margin with no room for hesitation. She pulled out the letter she had been carrying for months and added one final line at the end. If you are reading this, it means I acted because 381 Americans were dying while paperwork argued with itself. Then she stopped waiting and took action. Aircraft 297 was already sitting there, fueled up and loaded for war. The jet carried a full drum of 30mm rounds, along with Mavericks and rockets. She moved fast, not rushed, like her body already knew the sequence by heart. Oil check. Hydraulics. Chaff. Flares. Targeting pod. Inertial navigation system. Every switch flipped in the right order. 90 seconds later, the Warthog came alive beneath her. The tower was losing its mind, but she stayed quiet with them. On the emergency frequency, though, she said exactly what needed to be said. Any station, Thunderbolt 7, departing Kandahar. En route to the Karangal. 381 Americans are about to be overrun. She admitted it straight out. She was breaking the rules to save them. Wheels left the ground at 2:23 in the afternoon. Down in the valley, radio traffic was already starting to sound rough and uneven. The SEAL Ground Force commander, call sign Trident Actual, kept his voice controlled, but the rhythm told the real story. Ammunition was running low. Magazines were nearly empty. An F-16 flight lead checked in over the net. Visual on the target area. Unable to engage within 100 meters. Too danger close. That was when Delaney keyed her mic. Trident Actual. This is Thunderbolt 7. Mark your position with infrared. There was a pause. Then a voice came back, carrying something new in it. Thunderbolt 7, say again. Confirm. She answered without hesitation. I am requesting danger close authority. I am authorized to save Americans. Mark your position. As the valley opened up beneath her wings, the scene below matched exactly what she had sketched in red pencil during those long nights at 3 in the morning. There were 3 ridgelines stacked around the bowl, all overlapping fields of fire. Machine guns on the eastern ridge were tearing up the ground, kicking dirt and rock straight into the SEAL's position. I lined it up and ended the first gun with a tight, 2-second burst. Dust erupted where the rounds hit, and the gunfire stopped cold. I rolled the aircraft, pulled hard, and came back in for a second pass. An enemy assault element was pushing down the northern slope, barely 70 meters from our guys. I laid a short stitch of fire across the rock face. Everything went still. No friendly strobes blinked inside the impact zone. Thunderbolt 7, solid hits. Trident Actual came over the radio. The western ridge was next. 75 meters. That distance had a reputation. It was where fast jets made mistakes and got friendlies killed. It was also where the A-10 earned its keep. I broke left into a steep, slicing turn, settled the reticle just under a rock ledge, and squeezed off a half-second burst. The rounds cut a clean line of destruction right between friendly strobe lights and enemy muzzle flashes. The whole valley seemed to hold its breath. Every man down there understood what had just happened. An A-10 had fired where no one else dared. Then the voice from Kandahar came through my headset. Major Sanderson sounded shaken. Thunderbolt 7, return to base immediately. You are not authorized. I silenced the command channel and left only close air support and ground communications open. I was past asking permission. Trident Actual, I said. Keep marking targets. I am coming back around from the east. I followed the same plan I had built in secret and memorized line by line. First, eliminate the air defenses. I sent a Maverick missile into a hot surface-to-air site on the southern spur. Then I dropped low behind a ridgeline to break the lock from the second site. Once the lane was open, I went after the positions that held the crossfire together, not the ones that looked the scariest on the scope. I kept the gun disciplined. Half-second bursts only. No long sprays. No showing off. Let the dust settle. Let it hide our people. I let the roar of the gun do some of the work. That sound alone was enough to shake the enemy's confidence and start breaking their will to fight. I stayed on the radio with Trident and kept it simple. I told him to move 3 teams west while I covered them. I warned him to keep his people tucked in tight below the rock edge. I explained what I was doing as I did it. I was walking the gunfire uphill, placing rounds ahead of their movement so they could advance into safer ground. It only took a few minutes before the tone on the radio changed. The fear eased off, replaced by clear action words. Moving. Set. Next bound. Back in the operations center, the radar screen showed a single A-10 drawing sharp, armored turns through a valley packed with red enemy markers. An F-16 flight lead spoke up on the base radio net, watching it happen in real time. He reported an A-10 placing fire within 25 meters of friendly forces. He said it looked either reckless or incredibly precise. Up to that point, it was precise. The Navy SEAL communications echoed through the room. Thunderbolt 7, that gun holding us down on the east, is destroyed. We are clear to move. I answered right away. Copy that. Shift north. I am taking the crest in 3, 2 gun. The people who had laughed at Delaney earlier fell silent. Inside the command center, Hayes from the Inspector General's office reminded Major Sanderson what the regulations demanded. Morrison did not bother with the rulebook. He pointed at the map and said what the situation demanded instead. He said she was the only asset capable of doing this job. Either support her or start writing eulogies. Sanderson froze, stuck between his career and his conscience. While he hesitated, Delaney came around for a third pass and wiped out the second surface-to-air missile site with a pop-up Maverick fired from behind the terrain. With that threat gone, helicopters could finally start to enter the conversation. But not yet. First, the exit had to be cut. She stayed locked in with Trident Actual and guided him toward a weakness she had noticed months earlier while studying satellite images. It was a shallow crease along the western ridge, easy to miss unless you had traced the topographic lines by hand. Thunderbolt 7, I told him, that fold is real. You can move inside it. He did not hesitate. He trusted it. Take it, I said. I will rake the high ground 50 meters ahead of you. The 30mm cannon hammered out, sounding like a massive zipper ripping across solid rock. Enemy gunfire stumbled, then fell silent. The SEALs moved fast, bounding forward. For the first time that day, the blue markers on the screen started shifting. An enemy group tried to collapse the corridor from above, first at 50 meters, then pushing closer to 40. Delaney leveled out the dive, brought the Pipper down, and tapped a 3/4-second burst that planed the ridge like a carpenter shaving wood. Chips of stone flew, then everything went quiet. Good effect. Trident Actual came back, breathing hard but under control. We are at the opening. There are 2 more positions on the far lip, I said. Mark them with a spark. A bright infrared flash blinked on, and I split it cleanly by about a body length. No friendly forces were hit. The corridor stayed open. By the time the F-16 jets were cleared to engage the outer enemy rings, Delaney had already dismantled the inner defenses. The hardest part was done. Helicopters began spinning up. A line of ground quick reaction forces kicked up dust as they moved toward the pickup point. In less than 15 minutes, the valley shifted from a desperate last stand to a controlled breakout. Back at the base, Major Sanderson finally made his decision. He opened the support pipeline completely. Tankers, airspace deconfliction, full intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance feeds, and a medical evacuation plan all came online, tied directly to Delaney's corridor. Thunderbolt 7. A new voice came over the radio. Calm. Steady. In charge. Kandahar has you on primary. We are with you. Delaney never replied on the command channel. She did not need to. The only voices that mattered were the ones fighting on the ground below her. Trident Actual, keep pushing, I told him. I am right on your shoulder. That corridor was barely real, just a thin slice of quiet cut through a mountain still screaming with gunfire. But it was there, and we were going to use it. I stayed glued to Trident Actual's movement, turning the fight into a series of small, winnable moments I could solve in seconds. A pickup truck with a mounted gun popped up high on the right. It was too close and too fast for a Maverick missile, and rockets would have been sloppy. I dipped the nose, let the aiming reticle touch the hood, and tapped the trigger. The truck collapsed in on itself, and the gunner disappeared into a cloud of dust. West High is cold, I called out. Move. On the eastern spur, a rocket team tried to get clever, shifting position to throw off my angle. I reacted on instinct. Flares out. A quick jink. then a half-second burst straight through the muzzle flash. Offset shooter neutralized, I said. The SEALs kept advancing in bounds. First 3 teams, then 4, then all of them moving together, smooth and steady, like water following the slope of the land. With every bound they made, I put 30mm fire exactly where it needed to be so the next 10 seconds would not kill them. Thunderbolt 7, we are at the landing zone fold, Trident Actual reported. His voice sounded different now. Calmer. Grounded. 2 positions still firing on us, he added. Paint 1. An infrared marker blinked on. I fired a single controlled pulse, and the ridge seemed to breathe out as the gun went silent. Paint 2. Another infrared wink. I shaved that spot clean off the mountainside. Landing zone is workable. Trident Actual confirmed. Request rotors. Rotors inbound. Base finally answered on the close air support net. They were fully committed now. They said the first lift was 3 minutes out. 3 minutes can feel like a lifetime when everything depends on a ridgeline staying quiet. I made sure it stayed that way. The first Chinook helicopter rode its own wall of dust down into the fold, disappearing into the brownout as it came into land. I pushed the jet out toward the rim of the valley, scanning for anything that still had a clear view into the landing zone. 2 enemy muzzle flashes flickered from a cluster of rocks. I answered with a slanted burst, dragging the gunfire across the stone like a closing zipper. The flashes went dark. Chalk 1 lifting came over the radio. The first group was airborne with the initial teams on board, taking first sticks. Second Chinook inbound. Another cloud of dust rolled through the valley. Another moment where one loose thread could choke the entire operation. I went looking for that thread and found it. A PKM gun team was trying to shift down low for a better angle. I clipped it clean with 3 precise rounds. Chalk 2 lifting. We are green. A third helicopter committed, heavy with weight and stubborn on the controls. I stayed glued to its climb, watching it like a guard dog watching the yard. Then I heard it. A surface-to-air missile seeker chirping in my headset. Last threat. Last move. I was already reacting. Already dropping low. Already sliding behind the ridge as the missile searched for heat and found nothing but cold rock. I popped back up, spotted the launcher crew scrambling to move, and ended that problem with a short, unforgiving tap of the gun. Trident Actual, I said evenly. Your last teams? They are loading on Chalk 3 and Chalk 4. We are almost out. Almost was not good enough yet. An enemy group made a desperate run along the ridge, boots kicking loose shale, rifles raised. I drew a clean, bright line of fire between them and the landing zone. The run ended right there. Chalk 4 lifting, the Air Mission Commander announced. All personnel aboard, he followed. We are off. The very last men pulling rear security lifted out on a small tailgate helicopter that really had no business risking it. I held my fire until that bird disappeared into the brownout. Then I swept the ridge one more time. Not to rack up kills, but to send a message to anyone still watching. Not today. Not while I am here. After that, the valley went quiet. Just wind, dust, and the sound of breathing in my headset. Trident Actual came back on the radio. His voice was clipped and formal, the kind of tone you use when the moment deserves respect. Thunderbolt 7, be advised. 381 souls accounted for. 0 friendly killed in action during exfiltration. He paused, then added, We owe you our lives. Copy, I said. I did not say anything else. I stayed overhead, flying slow, lazy S-turns, wide and high, until the last helicopter shrank to a dot and the corridor sealed itself behind them like a wound finally closing. On the way back, I ran through my checks. Fuel was good. 1 Maverick missile left. The gun drum was light. Flares were low. My hands were steady. My head was clear. I switched the command channel back on. Kandahar, Thunderbolt 7, returning to base. There was a moment of silence. Then Major Sanderson came back, his voice controlled and impossible to read. Thunderbolt 7, you are cleared direct. The runway stretched out in front of me like a question. The landing was smooth. I taxied slow and shut everything down by the book. When I popped the canopy, the heat rushed in, along with noise from the line. People were standing. Maintainers, ammunition crews, medics, clerks, pilots, military police, even folks from the chow hall. It was not a cheer or a rally. It felt older than that. Row respect. I climbed down the ladder. Sanderson was waiting with the Inspector General and half the senior staff. I came to attention, ready for whatever was coming next. "You departed without authorization," Sanderson said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, sir. You violated direct orders. You engaged at distances that exceed every comfort zone we have ever written." "Yes, sir." He took a long breath. "You also brought home 381 Americans without losing a single one during movement." The pause stretched. "Captain Thomas, you will answer for your decisions," he said. Then his tone shifted. "But today, you will only answer one question." He looked me straight in the eye. "Can you teach exactly how you did that?" "Yes, sir," I said. He nodded once. "Good." We decided to write everything down so the next pilot would not have to figure it out alone at 3 in the morning inside a locked simulator. The official process followed, just like it always does. Statements, timelines, questions meant to find out whether I had gambled or whether I had calculated every move. I answered the same way every time. With math, with memory of the terrain, with clear methods. I focused on technique, not drama. I did not try to justify what I did. I just explained how I did it. The Inspector General listened closely. In the end, Hayes said it straight. He told me I broke procedure. Then he said my procedure fit the problem better than the one written in the book. He said they were not going to make a habit of rewarding insubordination, but they were going to make a habit of fixing doctrine. There was no talk of medals. Not then. Just work to be done. 6 months later, the patch on my shoulder reflected what we had built. Close air support development. That was the mission now. I taught from the ground up. I taught pilots to read terrain like a book. Every fold meant something. Every ridgeline told a sentence. Every valley held a paragraph. If you could not picture it clearly from 12 different angles, then you did not really know it. I taught gun discipline. Short taps, never long streams. Let the dust work for you, not against you. Use it as cover, not as a blindfold. Go after the right targets. The shooter that holds a crossfire together matters more than 10 fighters standing exposed. Talk to the ground, not to your ego. Say only what helps a team move 10 meters closer to staying alive. I showed clean footage and ugly footage. Hits and misses. I did not soften either one. Both mattered. Pilots who used to smirk started taking notes. Pilots who used to lecture started asking questions. Before long, the Marines were sending their joint terminal attack controllers to sit in and learn too. The Army sent their aviation representatives. Special Operations sent guys who had been in that valley, and they took seats in the front row, marking beats and nodding when things lined up with what they remembered. An awards ceremony happened somewhere along the way, then passed like most of them do. There were a few quiet citations. A ribbon or two. Nothing flashy. The written reports were careful where they had to be and precise where it mattered. On paper, the official consequence was a reprimand for launching without authorization. In real life, the consequence was responsibility. The kind that actually counts. Sanderson found me later near the simulator base. "I was wrong about you," he said, plain and direct. "I mistook preparation for risk. That one's on me." I did not smile or push back. I stepped outside my lanes, I told him. "That's on me." He nodded once. "Then let's redraw the lanes where they should have been." That was about as close to peace as either of us was built for. Units that used to ignore me stopped sending praise and started sending problems. That was the real shift. A border valley where the wind lied to you. I wrote up a full page on crosswind gunnery nobody had asked for before. A tight city block with friendly forces upstairs and hostile fighters below. I published a checklist that cut fratricide risk using 3 radio calls and 2 approach angles. A night extraction where strobes failed. I built a method to read patterns of life through thermal clutter and deconflict using timing instead of lights. None of it was heroic. It was just craft, shared openly. Some analyst printed a number and pinned it to a wall because certain truths need to exist in physical form. 381 extracted. 0 friendly killed in action during movement. People reached out and touched it as they walked past, the way folks touch something important without saying a word. I avoided that hallway when I could. Not out of humility, but out of honesty. On plenty of days, the math would have gone the other way. Skill mattered. So did timing. So did luck. So did the men on the ground who refused to break when the sky had already told them no. Doctrine changed the only way big systems ever do. Slowly, by inches. Minimum engagement distances stopped being absolute commandments and became guidelines with context. Simulator programs added modules I wrote in plain language. A-10 pilots learned to count rocks by breathing, not just waypoints by milliseconds. New lieutenants showed up wide-eyed, proud of their patches, hungry to be told what actually mattered. I gave them the same line every single class. Technology is a promise, not a plan. The plan is you. Learn the ground. Learn the gun. Learn the people on the radios. Then, when a valley throws a problem nobody wants to solve, you'll already have an answer that keeps Americans alive. Even after all that, when she walked the flight line, Delaney still ran her hand along the titanium frame as if it were alive. She still checked every bolt. She still scribbled notes in margins nobody else would ever read. Some mornings, a letter would appear on her desk with no return address. Inside, a coin, a patch, or a single line from someone who had been there. You showed up. She tucked them all into a plain box, keeping them like a quiet record. She never opened that box on days she flew. But one evening, long after the Karangal, she taxied back from a training hop and cut the engines. The line crew chief, grease streaked on his sleeve, sun baked into his grin, looked up and said something that needed saying once and never again. "Ma'am, it's good to know that if we ever get pinned hard, you've already been where the map stops." Delaney smiled. "The map never stops," she said. "Sometimes, someone has to draw the next line." That was the lesson. Not that one pilot broke rules, but that one pilot proved the rule beneath them all. When lives are on the line, skill married to courage can turn a tomb back into a road home. That is the heart of this story. Captain Delaney Thomas showed the world that courage and skill can redraw the map when it matters most. 381 Americans made it home because one pilot refused to quit. If this story moved you, leave a salute in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories of military valor and sacrifice. Until next time, stay strong, stay proud, and never forget those who serve.